Okay, remember that old slogan that the Motel 6 guys do? We'll keep a light on for you. That's what we did for Beth Fukumoto Chang, who experienced the joy of being a citizen on her way into town on a busy Monday morning. And so we... good morning.
Good morning.
It's hard to have a good attitude in traffic, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. But do you? And I know that you understand your constituents. Mm-hmm. And I do know that when you really boil it down to neighborhoods, when you say what is the biggest problem, how often do you hear traffic?
Oh, almost all the time.
Yeah. So there won't be many anti-rail placards in your neighborhood.
Oh, I doubt it. I
Anyway, we're glad you could be here. A couple of things we want to catch up on. First of all, from a personal side, I was watching with great interest the polling results coming in on Saturday, and right after that, Jeb Bush pulled out. I'm not sure why, but I was surprised, and I asked you if you were, and you were a little surprised too.
I was. Yeah. I actually was pulling for Jeb Bush, so I hadn't officially decided yet, but I thought he represented an important viewpoint in the
But what I think is interesting, and somebody commented earlier, and I want to ask you about this before we get started here locally, is that I'm sure that had already been anticipated, that was always part of the plan. I must tell you that the speech that he gave me, that he gave us on his departure was meaningful. It wasn't sour grapes. It wasn't anything but, look, this is what I'm going to do. But I'm having a problem with this. I'm having a problem with the word decided to suspend the campaign.
Right.
It's not suspending, is it?
No, I don't think so. Not unless somebody crashes and burns. Maybe he'll jump back in. Yeah. I don't know.
But I mean, they're all saying that.
Right.
Oh, I'm suspending my campaign. I mean, no, you're not. You're quitting.
I think people still want to believe it's anybody's game, but I think we're seeing more and more. There might only be one or two people in this race.
The interesting thing is, to me, is that everybody that is in the corner stumping for Trumping is saying, "Oh yeah, it's just growing." Well, it doesn't seem to be growing, but is maintaining.
Yeah.
So can you explain maybe how the party would be in the beginning? The party's got to be non-biased. Whoever runs.
Right.
But sooner or later, everybody, whether they like Donald or Cruz or Kasich or anybody, is going to say we got to vote for this guy or this gal, and it would have been.
I think so. I'm hearing more and more from Republicans who are maybe more independent leaning who say that they might not be able to vote for Trump, and that disturbs me. I'm hearing a lot of people that are saying they might just not vote in this election.
Oh, that's spooky.
Sad.
Yeah,
it's sad. Yeah.
Well, there's another thing. Beth and I were able to chat for a couple of moments at the Lincoln dinner the other night. It was first of all sold out event.
Yeah.
And that showed belief.
Yeah.
In things, but I also think it showed more or less, and I wanted to get your take on that before we get into actually what's going on this week in the Ledge, is it showed that, look, there is a way to actually have a real two-party system in Hawaii, and my takeaway from the event was that nobody was looking for control, but just representation.
Yeah, I think, Scott Walker, and what my takeaway, because I tend to be more pro-labor than many Republicans. My grandfather was a union leader, so I have some sympathies there. But my takeaway was that Scott Walker gets a bad reputation for just being the anti-labor guy. And really, that's not it. He was pro a lot of things, and that's how he got to where he was.
Well, you know what he said was, I'm pro-labor, but I'm not pro-union, because some of the unions have circumvented what they were really done for, was to create a level playing field, which they did. But now the private sector is saying, hey, look, we're giving people the same benefits a union will, and they don't have to pay dues.
Right, and I appreciated that he said, he went in with the goal of doing whatever it took to make lives better for the families of Wisconsin, period. That was it. It didn't matter. He didn't care if he took on the unions. He didn't care how they did that, but that's what ended up happening.
You know what I thought was really cool? He paid homage to Linda Lingle.
Yes.
And told everybody what a good job she was doing in her new thing. Special created position.
Right.
She's like the COO.
Right.
In the meantime, the bottom line is the bottom line. There was nobody poking holes in what Scott Walker said his accomplishments were, because they're on record.
Absolutely.
What he did fiscally for the place, and he literally turned around a dead duck economy into a producing one.
Yeah, and you know what I like the most about him? Actually, his speaking. He was very good at tying everybody in.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
if you noticed that. He
I
kept
did.
bringing in everybody's names. He brought in your name
Yeah, yeah.
and Linda Lingle's name, and he really personalized it.
What I thought was really cool, my wife said to me, she said, look, he doesn't have a teleprompter.
Yeah.
And nobody does. I mean, and,
Yeah.
and also I must tell you the same thing I observed with our mutual friend Charles Dejoux.
Yes.
Charles has got command of speaking.
Yes.
That is why it'd be such a shame that, Charles, if you're out there, run for something. I'm going to run for something.
Representative Matsumoto and I were sitting there saying the exact same thing.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
he's not using any notes. Yeah.
Well, and when you are first of all, from what I understand, and we really do have to move on because we got a lot of stuff to cover. But what I really think is important is I know that Scott Walker has given this speech a lot of times, but the fact of the facts remain is all of the stats that he came up with were legitimate Snopes. You can go Google him and find out that what he says is true. That's pretty important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, now I got before we get to our traffic report, and I'm going to ask Beth Fukumoto Chang to hang on for a little bit longer this morning because we weren't able to get started because of traffic. But I want to tell you that I saw something over the weekend, and I'm sure you've seen it, is that if everybody's wishes come true, the GE tax could be 6%. And that is a very scary thought.
Yes.
I know that it's an election year, and you said earlier that it wasn't likely to be a whole
I
lot
did.
of radical changes,
Yeah.
but now there are people coming up with some pretty good reasons why we should be paying more taxes.
Yes. People are getting crazy.
Yeah. So what are some of the, first of all, for those that don't understand how to be part of it, we'll explain that. But what are some of the things that are attached to the GE tax that we're worried about this week?
Long-term care insurance is one of the ones moving, and then the other thing is for HSTA's bill, the education bill.
We found out that we are woefully underpaying our teachers. Surprise, surprise. Is that my fault as a taxpayer, or is it the system that we created about their retirement and their benefits?
It's the Department of Education's fault. I wouldn't
Yeah.
even say it's retirement and benefits at
Yeah.
this point. It's just that so much money is going to administration. We've got a ton. It's the biggest part of our budget, and yet teachers are still not getting paid enough. It's unbelievable.
It's ironic that the people, the boots on the ground people,
Yeah.
are getting bupkis and they're having to do all kinds of extra things.
Right.
I'm very touched by a local spot that I saw where a teacher is talking about how she spent $2,000 this year out of her own pocket
Yep.
already on stuff.
Yep.
That is plucking at our wallet strings, though, Beth. I mean, a lot of people are going to say, well, then go ahead and put up the G. Instead of saying, get rid of the load, they're saying increase the taxes.
Right, and that's where we need to start looking at how much waste is in the Department of Education instead of automatically going to we just need more money. There's places we can save money too.
How do we do that? I do know that, and this is not, by the way, a Democrat or Republican issue. I know that there are some pretty strong Democrats in the Senate and Leg that are saying the same thing. Look, when we give somebody a benefit, if they're deserving of it, but boy, what about it? We're leaking like a sieve.
Yeah, I had proposed something actually a while ago that my colleagues didn't all agree with, but I had suggested we submit a bill saying we'd get rid of the Board of Education so that the governor was directly responsible for the department and therefore could change some of the administration. Right now it's being sort of administered by a group of people and it causes problems.
It seems to me that we're seeing more and more parents protesting.
Yeah.
Out in front of schools about this is no good and that's no good. And whether they're right or not, that should not happen. In other words, there should be somebody before that broach where they can say, hey, you know what, things aren't looking good at such and such school. Let's look at this lady or this guy. Should they stay there? Should we replace them?
Right. And you know, it really, once things are happening at schools, I don't know that that's where the problem is. We have to look at what's the systemic problem that's causing the problems at schools, right? And that's the Department of Education.
You know, we are already, the naysayers about raising the GE tax for schools are already saying, look, nationwide, we're among the top end of spending per students.
Yes.
You know, so we should be expecting the results.
Right.
And so what you're really saying is, why would somebody... And, you know, you're of an age, why would somebody make a decision? I'm going to be a teacher because I love teaching. And when they have to look to the reality, well, if I'm going to be a teacher and I love teaching, and my husband's the same thing, we're never going to buy a house. We're never going to have the kind of, amenities in life that we want for our children because we're going to be giving it all up for a job that doesn't pay enough.
Right. Yeah.
And here come the taxes.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, more coming up, including your opportunity to join us. Only telephonically, remember, when we do something that even looks a little bit like it might be political. Beth Fukumoto Chang is in the house, and we're talking about what's going on with your wallet and this GE tax. So if you've got a question, now would be the perfect time to bring us in, right? Everybody going to do the Harlem Shuffle. Well, we're doing the shuffle. And do the Harlem Shake. And one of the things that I want to talk about is, and I forgot all about this, is going to surprise Beth a little bit, but we talked a little bit a while ago, is that there's very likely going to be some reapportionment issues. And is that going to be in all branches? Is it going to be in the House, the Senate, or if it would stand to reason if it's in one, it's in both?
The reapportionment bill that we've been talking about is only in the House.
Okay.
So the majority leader and I put it in this year. It's moving last I checked, so hopefully it's still going.
Isn't the simpleness of it all is that the way we have this system is that we have it so, but regionally everybody is proportionately represented.
Yes.
So in other words, it's all about population by area.
Yes, and so the bill that we have wouldn't impact that. It wouldn't impact numbers or how we apportion districts to people. What it would impact is who gets to appoint the members of the commission that draw the lines.
Yeah.
Right now it's very bipartisan, but in the event that we don't have a Republican in the Senate or in the House, the Republicans would lose two of the 8 seats on the commission.
And that gets by power of a committee.
Right, so it's a committee, and we'd end up losing it, right? So so we're trying to make sure that Republicans can retain those 2 extra seats, basically.
Now that being said, I don't know what the Republican Party considers the ideal number. Certainly, it isn't what we have now. I mean, with one senator who is slowly but surely, like everybody else, aging out of the ability to serve. Although I had a nice chat with Senator Sloan at the Lincoln dinner, and he's still very much on it.
Yes, he is.
But
yes.
What about the you represent the cadre of leaders, the younger guys. So you're going to win. You got this winning attitude. But what about when somebody has been in the system for a decade or 2 or longer, and they just said, you know what, this isn't working, man. No matter what I do, it doesn't seem to be working. How do you keep that fire going?
I think what I've noticed, and it's not everybody. Actually, no, it is everybody. It goes along age lines. I think when you're some of the younger people, when we came in, we just said, we're in this to win, to get things done in the legislature, to move legislation, make friends. Let's represent our communities in that way, with that kind of progress. And I think there are others in other Republicans who believe that the right thing to do is just to make it difficult for Democrats to pass bad bills. And the way I like to look at that is defense and offense, right? I'm much more of an offensive person in that sense. I think we should be moving the ball forward, and other people think that we should just be defending.
But you know what? I must tell you that in all fairness, I've talked to some Democrats that even feel there should be more Republican representation because there are things that are going on within their party that they don't necessarily approve of.
Absolutely.
But there's not going to be any change. In other words, if you vote on the other side of this, you're in trouble.
Yes.
Do what you're told here. Yes. Is there anybody that actually says that when somebody goes in? Okay, congratulations on your victory. Here's how it's going to be.
I had somebody to do that, and I tried to do that with freshmen this year. Some listen, some don't. But I think you need to be told sort of how it is, because when you run for office, you're not you don't fully understand how the building's going to work once you're there.
I love this thing I play every now and again, how a bill becomes a law. People really don't know that.
Yes.
And what's really important, and the reason why we do what we do during the legislative session, is to let people know what's on the plate on any given week, and also what the GOP thinks it should be. In other words, it's not all just spend. It's we can't afford to spend.
Right.
Okay, so the reason why people should pay attention to reapportionment is if you're in that area, that means if you are, say, a staunch Republican and you're living in that area primarily because the person that represents you is of your party, that won't necessarily be the case anymore.
No, it won't. And I think that's where we need people to help us run for office, because especially in a reapportionment year. So one of the I picked up a seat in a reapportionment year. So did Representative Matsumoto. And I think that's a good time for us to start recruiting new candidates. Now, that's not going to be until 2022. So if you're listening, start thinking now.
That's the other thing. I mean, I know that in your family, it was almost a given for you that you knew you were going to be doing this. But then when you actually get out boots on the ground, did you wonder, do I really want to do, I don't know if I really want to do this.
Oh my goodness, the amount of time that I spent sitting in the car just being like, I don't want to walk, I don't want to knock on doors. It's so unnatural. And having my sister just being like, get out of the car and shouting at me.
By the way, I mean, we are in Hawaii. Some of us are a little diminutive in our confidence level and everything else.
Right.
Certainly, when you know that you are an R and you're in a D district looking for votes, everybody's not happy to see you all the time.
No, not at all. And I like to think that I'm a pretty confident person, but walking up to somebody's door and knocking and never knowing what you're going to get, it's not fun.
I got to laugh because there's this program that I like. My wife can't stand reality shows, but I like this one called American Pickers. And they go up and they buy old farm stuff and they go resell it and everything else. But they never know when they're going up to some desolated farm whether the guy's going to come to the door with a welcome or a shotgun.
Right.
And so I do know that there are rules, and that if somebody says, get off my property, there's no problem.
Oh, yeah.
And what's the worst thing that's ever happened? You ever been getting bitten by a dog yet?
I am one of the few that has not. A
Because
lot
I
of
know
people
that happens,
have
right?
been
Yeah,
bitten
yeah.
by dogs. I did have somebody threaten to bring out his gun, which was terrifying. But I have some. There are some colleagues that I have that have seen guns, so you never know.
I think that the main thing is you got to say is, excuse me, exactly how long is that chain on the dog?
My goodness, the dogs.
Yeah. But I love animals. And I'm sure you do too.
Sure.
But who knows what these things are?
Oh, sometimes they're big dogs.
Okay, let's talk about the big dogs barking at the big square building. Just for the people who don't understand, is the opportunity to write a new piece of legislation has passed.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that means that if somebody comes up with a bright idea now, it's likely to be a concurring resolution, or it's likely to be something that gets attached to something else?
It could get attached to something else. I think if you've got a great idea especially if it's an issue that we're talking about, we just haven't figured out yet how to do it. Like say you know how we can fund the Department of Education or fix the Department of Education.
Yeah.
I think there's still room if you can convince one of the committee chairs. But in general, I would say that the time has kind of passed.
Okay, so that means that this week, are there still some things this week on Shaky Legs?
Yeah, so this week we're going to be the Finance Committee is going to be hearing all of the bills that still have finance referrals. So this becomes, if you're on finance, this becomes a big week for the Finance Committee. They're going to be hearing. See, in the House, we killed a lot of the GET bill and a lot of other things. So we're not going to be hearing those huge bills. I think that's going to happen on the Senate side this time, and then in a few weeks it'll happen on our side again.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is the time then it would be muy important if you are satisfied that the House has abandoned something like a GE tax. You better find out what the Senate does.
Yes,
and here's,
watch the Senate.
I want to tell you, I got to share this. I have a dear friend. I hope he's listening. His name is Roy Morioka. And he's a bottom fisherman. He fishes, he goes out and catches the deep seven. He is as much of a fishing advocate as anybody and goes down all the time to the ledge. And we talked about this one Senate concurring resolution 1, which has to do with everything except what you think it does. And so I learned if you go to the site, and you can tell people how this works, and you type in the search, bills retaining to education,
right?
It's going to lead you to where you need to read.
Yes.
It makes it a lot easier than it used to be.
Yeah, so the keywords is one of the best functions on the website now. Yeah. So yes, if you could look up, earn income tax credit or income taxes, and it'll pull up all the bills that include that language.
I would imagine that your staff and you do that too. I mean, you need to keep abreast of stuff. Yeah. But I think in the other main thing, which I think is extremely important, and that is once you get there, that if you register. And it's free and it's painless, right? You register, then you can actually email in your comments. You can actually testify without going to someone. That didn't used to be the case.
That's true, and you can also track bills. So say you're really concerned about the GET bill, you can look that up. You can plug it in, and then you'll get email alerts every time it's getting heard.
It's like a personal email to you,
right,
with the bills that you're interested in. Yes. I'm guessing, and this is one more question. Oh yeah, first of all, we're going to make you stay for one more little segment. Okay.
No problem.
After the news, but I'm also guessing that one of the things that I took away from the Lincoln dinner is that the fact that this information is so valuable to be able to click in on this stuff that those bills that are likely to do with improvements or enhancements to our IT capability at the state will be looked at, because we have some problems.
Oh gosh, yes. I think the biggest waste of money is that we're still doing things on paper.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
unbelievable.
And you saw some of the video over the weekend, I'm sure. It's obnoxious how much paper there still is.
Yes.
And how many people are reading it.
Yeah.
Well, you said one thing. We're going to come back after the top of the hour news here. There are some that say abolish the Board of Education. Okay.
Yeah.
And what about those on the mainland that are saying abolish the IRS? You
Right.
put a flat tax out there, you don't need hundreds of thousands of people creating concerns. Have you looked at any of these? I mean, I kind of like it. I think it might be a good idea. Remove the bogus deductions and let's tax everybody equally.
I completely agree. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's part of the big picture.
Yep.
Okay, speaking of the big picture, Beth Fukumoto Chang in the house. We're going to talk for another segment. If you got and when we come back, we're going to speak specifically about some of the things that are going on this and in the next couple of weeks. More coming up. Beth Fukumoto Chang from the Minority Party is in the house on Minority Monday. Be right back.
On 690, The Answer. Now, back to the Mike Buck Show on 690, The Answer.
Open Gangnam Style.
Well, Beth Fukumoto Chang still in the house because she had an unpleasant experience called traffic this morning. Not able to join us as early. And, somebody's actually commented that at an email, and even since it's not political, we really can't expect anything different. When the rail finally does become available, even the city in the very beginning said traffic is going to be like it is now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not going to be all of a sudden the day the train opens, our problems are over. But it does speak to if we don't do something about mass transit, and we waited until when this train was going to be powered to do anything, that even the most stringent, the most demonstrative naysayer would have to become a yaysayer, because we really don't have much of an option.
Yeah, I think the mistake that people make, when people are anti-rail, you always hear, well, it's not going to do anything. The Star Advertiser said it wasn't going to do anything, and Hart said it wouldn't do anything. But they said that it wouldn't do anything because of the growth on the leeward side and Central Oahu. So we're adding all these new homes, and we haven't seen the effects of that yet.
No, yeah.
When all these new homes come in, the traffic's going to be way worse than it is now. But the rail should, in theory, should be keeping the traffic to what it is today.
But, here, the issue that I have problems with, and I know this comes up with the Leds a lot, is that, all right, the state invariably is the responsible party financially. If this thing doesn't make it,
That's right.
the state,
Yeah.
you guys have to pick up what the city is doing.
Right.
But the real concern is that there's still a huge number of anti-rail people out there that have resigned themselves to the fact that we're going to have it, but they just don't like what it is. They want the maglev, they want the other things.
Right.
It appears that it's a little late to make that kind of a change.
Yeah, switching to something like maglev at this point, it's a little silly, and to continue to offer people that as a real solution is kind of false.
Well, I think what it's doing is it's trying to placate people by saying, hey, this fight's not over. And to me, it looks like this fight is over.
The
Get
fight
used
is
to
over.
it.
I think the fight right now should be making sure the city's operating it and utilizing the funds the way they're supposed to be.
Now, let's take a look at the other thing. And I don't know what the Ledge is doing about it this time, or even if it is this time. But there's been all of this controversy out there about Hawaiian Electric, and this is statewide, and NextEra, and all of this kind of stuff. Invariably, this comes back to haunt the state, because when you're talking about credits and infrastructure, you're talking about a private company, a for-profit company, that is really, outside of Randy Iwase and a couple of more people yelling at him every now and again, who controls them.
Yeah, and I don't think we've seen the PUC that great at controlling HECO.
Yeah.
So and HECO's been able to operate somewhat independently, and I think there are a lot of my constituents have issues with HECO. Whether or not there's going to be a viable alternative is another story. So we do know that we need investment into the grid infrastructure. We need that. It's going to come from either the state or a private company like NextEra.
Does something like that ever get mandated? Because one of the things is, and this has happened in other places, and this is why NextEra has become so big, like in Florida, because the utility already knew that it couldn't do the investment.
Right.
Without doubling the rates.
Right.
And that's something that the PUC would say, I don't think so.
Right.
But how do we have our cake and eat it too? Because
Right.
they do have to change.
I think if you look at the salaries running up and down, especially the higher levels of HECO, the administrators, not even the actual technicians, the administrators, it's not like HECO's short of money.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been going into the grid infrastructure.
Okay, is there a mirror of what's happening there? What's happening to the teachers? I mean,
Absolutely.
we got this big, huge, this debt, this service to debt that isn't in the classrooms.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. There are a lot of favors being done, and a lot of the organizations that are quasi-state organizations or state departments that that they're getting paid too much to be administrators. We need to make sure that people on the ground are also getting their fair share.
What about as it gets a little closer? When people, now that we're assuming that everybody right after this program is going to go to Hawaii.gov and Google the bills.
I hope so.
We know that doesn't. In an ideal world, more of us would get involved.
Right.
But what are some of the immediate things that, for instance, what has you rolling up your sleeves this week?
Well, this week for me, because most of my committees are done, I'm just going to be watching the finance committee and making sure that our caucus's bills. I think we still have a few bills alive, making sure that those move through. And then making sure nothing big pops up. So this is the week where all the tax increases, if there are any, hiding sort of in the finance committee. This is where they could pop up. So just keeping an eye on that. I haven't heard of any yet.
Okay, now you mentioned caucus, and what we're talking about here is the minority caucus. This group. People really need to be explained about the caucus.
Yes.
And I do know that at the Lincoln dinner, a lot of people were curious as what this is. Give us Caucus 101, why it's important for somebody to show up, and they can register on the spot if they want to,
right?
Or else they can't. Caucus. Yep. What is this caucus thing about? How does it work?
Okay, so and I just explained this to somebody. I wrote something about it. So a caucus is basically just means a meeting, right? So it's just a meeting. So when we use it, when I'm talking about the legislature, I'm talking about a meeting of
the
Republicans,
caucus,
the minority Republicans. Or if I say future caucus, it's a meeting of the 35 and unders. If it's women's caucus, it's a meeting of the women. That's what caucus means. In terms of presidential elections, caucus means a meeting of all the Republicans or Democrats in that district to decide who's going to be the president.
Right.
Or who they're going to nominate.
Yeah,
for president.
now that's the key. So each of these caucuses that's happening for the Republicans, the same result is not expected in each different place. It won't be.
No, it won't be. Yeah. And it's like a regular election. So you're gonna show up at a school. You're gonna vote. In Mililani, we're going to be at Mililani Malk Elementary School. You show up there, you vote. Everybody in Mililani that's a Republican can go. If you're not a Republican, you can go and sign up for the party there and then vote on the spot. And then we'll tally the votes at the end of the day.
Is it that simple?
It
Beth?
is. Yes.
Here's my idea. Make me a Republican.
Here's my ID. You fill out a card, and that's it. That's all you need. Yep.
And what sort of a commitment to an ongoing Republican do I make?
Oh, there's really no commitment.
What I mean.
You
There's
just
no
have to
commitment.
sign the thing,
And I know why that is. And somebody asked the other day, and I said, wait till Beth gets here, and I'll ask her the same thing. And that is, all right, why would you have to register? Why couldn't you just go and vote? And I know the answer already. Is that to understand the sanctity of the importance of this thing, you have to identify who's voting.
Right. Right.
Not who they voted for, but who's voting.
Oh, right. No, and the idea being that if you're going to vote for the Republican presidential candidate, then you should be pledged to be a Republican, right? You're signing up to be a Republican as well as signing
Otherwise,
up to
you
vote.
can just load up the box. You go pick up a bus full of people and say, come over here and vote for this guy.
Right.
Okay, so that being said, you are at least for a moment a Republican.
Right.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I know that there's some people that would look at that, and this is why you have to explain it. That some people in previous, I mean, there were accusations of Acorn, for instance, loading up people in a bus to vote for President Obama in the very early stages just to roll up the numbers.
Right.
When the election has been made at a caucus, what then happens? There's going to be a bunch of delegates from Hawaii going to the convention to say Hawaii intends to support, or Hawaii supports so-and-so.
Right. So
how many so-and-sos.
Right. So Hawaii is a proportional state. So depending on how much of the vote everybody gets, they'll get a certain number of delegates coming out of Hawaii. So, and then everybody goes to national convention and they're pledged to that delegate.
Isn't it cool? Really?
I went and it was fun. And if your candidate by then has dropped out, your votes can go to somebody else, and it gets interesting.
Okay, that means that let's say that you're a delegate and you went to a caucus. I mean, you're representing the Mililani caucus, okay?
Right.
And when you get to the convention, by the time you get there, the guy you caucus for is gone.
Right.
So it's somebody else.
So like some of these Jeb Bush people, right?
Isn't it probable that the Republican decision, maybe even the Democrat decision, may be done at the convention rather than predetermined?
Yeah, I think it's looking more and more likely, which, you know what, is a good thing for America.
Hasn't it been sort of in the past, bygone? You know, it's a formality.
Yeah.
I'm from Hawaii and we support blah, everybody's kissed the tree.
Right, right. The last one I went to, Romney was already, everybody knew he won already. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So it becomes kind of important to do that. So if somebody is, and I know I've received a few notes, how is the party explaining to Republicans where they go and what they do? And should they just go to Hawaii GOP and find out? What should they do?
Yeah, so GOPHawaii.com should have the information up there. We should be getting more information out coming up soon. I'll, at least if you're in my district and you go to BethFukumoto.com, I'll make sure that the Republican stuff is up there for Mililani at least.
Okay, so when you get to work this morning, now that we've spent some time together, are you going to be saying, you know what, I got to write a bill about traffic this morning?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Thanks so much. We'll see you again next time.
Of course.
There you go. Beth Fukumoto Chang in the house. And we'll be back with more of the Mike Buck Show right after this traffic.